What's up, guys? Out here riding today. It's Father's Day today, and happy Father's Day to you guys that are fathers. And since it's Father's Day, just wanted to talk about some men stuff. Some stuff men are probably interested in. And I wanted to talk about the barbecue, basketball, and being older. And I was thinking about barbecue this morning when I went riding to try to beat the rain that still has not shown up. You can see the dark clouds in front of me, but the rain hasn't shown up. So I went down and went to the Marietta Square, city of Marietta Square, see what was going on down there. It was supposed to have a Juneteenth event down there. I went down there to see if it was going on since they had rain in the forecasted. Seems like it may have been canceled because the live music that was set up to go on down there was not going on at the time. So they may have preemptively canceled that event, at least the live music. And then I went by my favorite barbecue place that I've gone to in Georgia, at least. It's called Frank's Cajun and Soul Kitchen. It's a little drive-up place where you can't even go in. It's a small building that's set up, and they're smoking their food, their meat outside on the grill. And I was thinking that I really like that place because I'm a griller and a smoker, and you get people claiming that their meat is, their barbecue is smoked, and that's probably true. I judge good barbecue based on how they cook the pork ribs. And a lot of people claim that their meat is smoked, and that can be the case. But if it's not slow cooked, slow and low, the meat is usually hard. The ribs are usually hard. So I like low and slow because it stays tender and the meat falls off your bone. That's what I like about this Frank's restaurant, barbecue restaurant. So I went down there and got some of that after I left the Marietta Square. And what I like about it, so I like it to be slow cooked, and I like it based on the sauce, which is more of a honey-based barbecue sauce, which is what I prefer over, I guess there's some barbecue sauces that are mustard based. I know there are some that are vinegar and ketchup based, because that's how my family used to cook theirs. But I prefer the sweeter side, and the sweeter side is usually, in my experience, or the places I prefer, not as spicy. There's not that much bite on your tongue, which is more of a Kansas City style. I've had some great barbecue in Kansas City when I went there a few years ago. Everything in that particular restaurant was good. Not just the ribs, but everything they had in there. So that's my preference on that. So I usually cook everything I cook slow and low, because I don't like the meat to be hard. Now I will expose sometimes the hot dogs and sausage links. If I'm cooking them, I will expose them sometimes to direct heat after they are done to get some bark on the outside of them, to blacken the outside of them, because that's what most people in my family prefer. So that's that barbecue conversation. What type of barbecue and what type of barbecue sauce do you like? How do you judge what food do you use to judge a good barbecue restaurant? And then I wanted to talk about the basketball game, because when I left the barbecue restaurant, I had to get back home to watch the basketball game. I wanted to watch the WNBA Atlanta Dream. We're playing the Mystics, whoever the Mystics are. I forgot what city that is. So I had to get back and watch that. And I was thinking I prefer watching the women's game, both college and professional, a little bit more than the men's, because I grew up in the era when you had post players, the big centers posting up and playing in the post and doing all their work from the post, like Elijah Wan and David Robinson and Moses Malone, Robert Parrish to a certain extent, Jabbar, Ralph Sampson. So a lot of that is going away, because you got so many guys that can shoot three-pointers. They can shoot at a distance. Back in the day, those bigger guys, they were not big-time shooters. Well, distance shooters, jump shooters. So that's what and I know the women's game, college and pro are still doing that to a certain extent. A lot of times they still seem to be going away from it now, because you still have so many of them that can shoot so well. Now we'll watch some men's college games when they get into the March Madness. I am watching the NBA games. This playoffs, the championship series, these are two pretty good teams, but during the season I mostly try to focus on either the Atlanta Hawks and whoever they're playing, and the women's game. So, and the other conversation about basketball is the determining who is the GOAT, all-time GOAT, greatest of all time. I know LeBron comes up in the conversation and Jordan comes up in the conversation, but in my opinion, you can't talk about them two without considering the era that they're playing in. There's an era, the era has changed where they don't call travels and certain steps now that they did before. Travel is not necessarily by the rules that I grew up with. I don't even know if they're by the rules that they have now. But if you can get 3 and 4 steps without getting called to travel now, and that was not the case in the previous era, those are two different conversations of who is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And in my opinion, Jordan, because he played under more strict calls as far as the rules, he has to be the GOAT, in my opinion, because I guess I had the privilege of seeing I have the privilege of seeing both eras. I guess some of the younger people that they didn't necessarily see Jordan play per se. That's kind of like me trying to give an opinion on Oscar Robertson and Artis Gilmore when I didn't grow up in that era. I didn't grow up in that era and didn't see enough of their play to make a judgment call on it. But I do know now they're not calling travels. Even in the women's game, I saw Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark playing in a game yesterday, and they threw the ball to Aaliyah Boston in the post, and she got double teamed, and she spun around a couple times trying to find someone to pass the ball out to, and then she decided to switch her pivot foot all of a sudden, and they didn't call that as a travel, or they didn't call the travel. So even in the women's game, the era is different. The era is completely different. So the GOAT conversation is a moot point when you don't have the discussion of the era that they played in. And then I wanted to talk about so-called being old or getting old or being too old to continue riding motorcycles. I watched a Chris Caliente YouTube video the other day, and he was riding with two guys, but one of the guys was, I think, his first time riding with Chris. They were in Texas, so he was in that guy's state of residence. And the guy, his name is Tony, and he mentioned that he was 72 years old, and he's continuing to ride, but he was still a rider. And Chris decided to ask him. Chris evidently knows someone that's in their 60s. I think he mentioned 60 or 61. He wasn't sure the guy's age, and that guy had told him that he was. The guy had told him he was 61 years old and too old to continue riding motorcycles. He asked 72-year-old Tony what he thought about that, and Tony brought up Satchel Paige and something that Satchel Paige evidently said. He was the old Negro League baseball player. And someone had asked Satchel Paige one time how old he was, and Satchel Paige told the questioner he didn't know how old he was because they didn't keep records of black people in that generation, in that time period. So he didn't know how old he was, because he was asking, how old are you because you're continuing to play baseball? And Satchel Paige said he didn't know how old he was. And Satchel Paige evidently asked, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you were? So he didn't stop playing because of a unknown number. If he was still able to play, he would continue to play. And I like that question that Satchel Paige evidently asked. How old would you be if you didn't know how old you were? You don't let a number on your body. Determine when you have to stop doing what you love doing or what you can do. A lot of times, a lot of the aches and pains of our body come from aches and pains and bad health, internal health. Failure comes from us stop doing what we used to do when we were so-called younger. had a less experienced body, I like to call it. I'm not old, I have an experienced body. So, what do you guys, what's your opinion on so-called being too old to do something? How do you feel? How old do you feel, regardless of how old you know you are to be? That's a great question. How old would you be if you didn't know how old you are? Because the real part of you never ages. Your spirit never ages. That's the only eternal part of it, and it should be leading the system. Now I can see if you in bad physical health or bad mental health, that's a whole different conversation. But that's not an age conversation. That's not an age conversation. That's a health conversation. Just because you've been on this earth longer doesn't mean your health is bad. So continue doing it until you can't. My mother had an aunt. That lived maybe at least into her 90s, maybe she crossed over into the hundreds. And my mom told me one time, in her 90s, my mother's aunt, she got on a swing set, like at a playground. She got on a swing set in her 90s, because when she was growing up, she could not get on a swing set because of the racism that was going on in the country in the civil rights period. So she, as a black person, they were not allowed to get on swing sets or playgrounds at that time. So in her 90s, she finally got on the swing set for the first time, but she was in great health, so you couldn't tell that she was in her 90s, especially, well, mentally and physically. It didn't in any kind of ways. You couldn't tell her age. She didn't walk slow. She was not rounded. She stood upright. Her spine was not rounded. So don't let a number on your body determine what you do. Don't let it limit you. That's probably going to be my new motto. If you didn't know how old you were, how old would you be? Or if you don't know how old you are, how old would you be? Or, I think this is the correct one, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you are? Alright, guys, I've dodged all the rain in both of my rides today. I rode earlier trying to beat rain and got out there. So guys, I hope you enjoyed your Father's Day, your family, your friends, whatever you did or didn't do, your rest. And I hope you enjoyed that conversation that I heard that I mentioned from Tony. 72 years old, still riding a 2024 Honda Goldwing DCT. So it's not an older bike. He just purchased a bike. He's determined not to give up riding. Don't let the number change your mind. I call that the wisdom of ages. I like listening to older people, conversations of older people. Like Richard Pryor said one time, you don't get to be old being no fool. There's some stuff you learned and stuff you overcame, and in order to be older, to be aged, to be a senior, you don't get old being no fool. Richard Pryor says a whole lot of young dumb people dead, dead than an MFer. It's a whole lot of dumb young people deader than an MFer. All right, guys. Peace out. Taking it on home now. Talk to you later. This was good.